Okay, so thank you very much. I now want to come to some of the arguments in the initial presentation, and I hope that I'll have time to go back to the various counter-arguments that Dr. Gregg presented. Now, obviously I can't do it all, but I think it's important to show that the issue of origins of the universe and the claim that God is the best explanation is completely spurious for several reasons. First of all, I repeat what I just said a moment ago, which is that to say that you have an explanation for something, and then to say my explanation is God, is actually simply to use a word that has absolutely no content whatsoever. People used to think that they had an explanation called God for lightning, for floods, for a disease, for everything that happened in your life. And the whole point of, if you grant that there's been some improvement since the Dark Ages, the whole point of what has led to this improvement is precisely that people have said, wait a minute, to say that God did it is to say absolutely nothing. The only thing that will allow you to understand something is to give some sort of mechanism. Now, do we have a mechanism for the Big Bang? No, we do not, nor do I claim that we do. But it is completely spurious to say, just because we don't know what caused it, it must have been God. It begs the question, and it's completely vacuous. Now, there were a number of truly fallacious arguments Dr. Craig presented that had to do with infinity. First of all, the idea that there's no actual infinity attributed to most mathematicians is completely wrong. All you have to do is to take a stretch from my left finger to my right finger, and you will see that there is, just in that stretch, an actual infinity of points. This is a problem. This gives rise to a problem that Zeno worried about, and that worried everybody until people finally figured out that actually it wasn't a problem after all, precisely because you could allow that there is an actual infinity there. Now, whether the world needs to be finite because you can't have an actual infinity is in any case something which the argument doesn't show at all. Why? Because there's a difference between being boundless and being truly infinite. As many of you, I'm sure, know, in geometry, you can have a space that is completely without an edge, and yet which is finite in extent. For example, the surface of a sphere is such that you can never get to the end. If you're a two-dimensional being wandering around, you can never get to the edge, but you find yourself going back to the beginning, sooner or later. Now, there is no reason to think, in fact some reasons to think the opposite, that there couldn't be, since space-time is a single entity rather than different entities for physicists, that there couldn't be a structure of space-time such that you have a kind of finitude in extent which is compatible with the complete absence of any boundary. However, there's supposed to be a boundary if you believe in a certain story of the Big Bang, but this boundary makes absolutely gives absolutely no comfort to the person who thinks that God must have stepped in from outside, because it simply does not take care of the simple recurrence problem. The recurrence problem is, okay, so God was there all along. You say, well, no, it wasn't all along because it was outside of space-time. Right? Maybe there were laws of nature that existed outside of space-time, but were not personal. Dr. Craig wants us to believe that only a person could actually bridge the gap between, if you like, mathematics and reality. But there's absolutely no, that is simply a dogma, and indeed it's a fundamental and well-known difficulty about those who believe that there is, if you like, a spiritual entity like the soul, that it leads to dualism, and that God would have had to also be physical in order to actually produce any effects in the world. Now, on the fine-tuning business, there is here again a very important fallacy. And I'm going to demonstrate this to you if I can have a piece of chalk. I can make happen in this room right now, I won't have time to actually do it, but I'm going to show you how I will do this, an event of arbitrarily large